Thank you for coming and braving the snow. So I'm so glad to see you all here. My name is Somchay Yau, and my background is actually in physics and computer electrical engineering. I've got 2 decades of software engineering experience, full stack software development, but I'm here to talk about ransomware. That's because I'm also a founder of a cybersecurity startup, and I love to code. And when I'm not coding, I'm doing other things in the business, but when I'm not coding, I'm also researching about ransomware. I really like to understand what they do, the tactics, techniques that they utilize, and they're always finding new ways to try to evade the detections. So today is some of the things that I've found really interesting, and I hope that you would be interested in this as well, and eventually it would inspire you to also become cybersecurity enthusiasts and within your own organization. So before we begin, though, what I found interesting is that I wanted to know what AI thought of what ransomware was. So actually, I asked AI, can you generate for me a couple of images? The first one was, what would ransomware look like if it was a boss-level character on a Street Fighter movie? And this is what it gave me. Now, I said, okay, I want to generate again. Give me a different perspective. There's another one. Now, what if this ransomware character was actually in a Pixar-like movie? I tried 3D Mario Studio, but the licensing, they wouldn't let me do it. So Pixar was allowed because Disney is allowed. And then it gave me another one. Now, what if it was a manga or manhwa? What would it look like there? So I think AI really encapsulates what ransomware, at least from what the world sees ransomware. It's dark, it can be risky, it could be dangerous. And if you see the top right character, the manhwa character, he's wearing a suit and tie. And this will tie into our talk. But also, not only it could be dangerous, but at some points, like as in the middle images there, it can also be deceptive. You may think it's completely safe, and you'll be surprised at what it can do. So what will we be discussing today? We're going to look at the history of ransomware. We're going to delve into the attacker mindset, some of the types of hackers, as well as what drives them. We're going to look at cybersecurity, cyber criminal personas. We're going to look briefly at the ransomware attack chain, and then we're going to look at business model. Surprisingly, ransomware does have a business model. And then we're just going to look at, from attacker versus a defender point of view, what are some of the challenges and the trends that might come into play in the next couple of years. If you see this light bulb, you got 3 choices. It might be just a good conversation piece for, those first-time dates. It might be a good topic to confuse your mom if she's on your back about eating well, unless I'm your mom. We'll be talking quite a bit about ransomware. Or it might just be on your final exam. Okay, so evolution of ransomware. 1989, we first see the first variant of ransomware, AIDS Trojan. This was developed by Joseph Popp. He was a biologist, and he created 20,000 infected floppy disks. These floppy disks. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this sort of thing. And when the victim put this floppy disk into his computer, it would encrypt it, and then it would demand ransom. The interesting part is it asked for $189, not $190, but $189 to be shipped to a PO box in Panama. Now, what's really interesting about this is that he also gave out, in addition to the floppy disk, he gave out leaflets. And this leaflet, it had an end-user license agreement if you read carefully. Okay, so I'm going to read it to you. If you install this on a microcomputer, then under the terms of this license, you agree to pay PC Cyborg Corporation in full for the cost of leasing these programs. These program mechanisms will adversely affect your program application, and your PC will stop functioning normally. You are strictly prohibited from sharing this product with others. So read the fine print. Unless the fine print is in a phishing email, then don't read that. Okay, so earlier ransomware tended to be fairly simple in terms of encryption. They were easy to break. Earlier, one of the early variants of GP code, it got sophisticated later on, but in 2004, GP code was a malicious Word document. It actually disguised itself as a job application form. So if you were emailed this and you were applying for a job, you opened it up thinking you were going to fill out something, you downloaded it, it would start to encrypt, and then demand for ransom. Luckily, though, ransom was only about $100 to $200, so still at this point, it was not a major threat. By mid-2005, we see improvement in encryption. So previous to that, typically it was a symmetric encryption. Simply put, you have one key for both encryption and as well as decryption. For asymmetric encryption, it got more complicated than that, and so it was harder to break. A TVS Trojan, what it would do is it would enumerate the files in your My Document folder. And then it would actually take the content of that and encrypt it and push it all into one single file. What's interesting about this case, and what I think is pretty neat, is that every time you tried to look at the encrypted file, it would run another malicious code. Now, in order to get your content back, the way that this particular author did it was you had to go to a website, you had to make a purchase on this website, and then you would get the decryptor. Then in 2009, Bitcoin came. It was released to the public, and ransomware authors leveraged this. Now, instead of having to send cash to a PO box in Panama, you could actually leverage digital currency to demand payment. It made things so much easier, and it opened the door for a lot of ransomware operations. By mid-2010, you see a concept called ransomware as a service. It's a subscription model. So what would happen is the ransomware as a service customers, they are referred to as affiliates, they would rent or buy services and so that they can use the toolkits that the ransomware as a service offered them. This actually made things easier. You didn't have to be technical in terms of creating ransomware anymore. It made it a lot easier for affiliates to do attacks without the resources involved in the business. Another thing that happened was that operations became targeted. So instead of targeting mom and dad, what you would do is look for big game. And they are high value, high earners. So in one shot, you could, instead of $100, $200, you can go from $1 million to $1 billion. So in the last couple of years, we've seen diversification in their tactics. Extortion, for example, there's a concept called data exfiltration. It's basically the idea that you're stealing sensitive data off of an organization's networks. And then what they would do, say, if you had backup on your system and you encrypted it and you said, well, I'm not going to pay you because I can just recover my backup, what they would do is double extortion. They would say, okay, we have your sensitive information. We're going to release that if you don't pay us. Now, adding a third layer to this, which is called triple extortion, is another way to put pressure on the victims. So in addition to leaking your sensitive data, maybe they say, we're going to threaten your clients. What if instead they apply a DDoS, distributed denial of service attack? This makes it very difficult for business to keep running if they are sending signals to halt the business. You just can't keep it running. So these types of attacks, and there's the bulb, can be a lot of pressure with victims. Another way that they're diversifying is the way that they evade the detection systems there. So in addition to coming on the system and sneakily trying to get in, you're also trying to stay there and go undetected, bypassing sensors, taking out sensors, or just simply doing techniques that the behavioral detections are not at the moment looking for. So after like 7 slides, I'm going to define ransomware. And so ransomware today, really it's a malicious software, it's malware that gains unauthorized access to your data, to your devices, and it holds them hostage until you pay ransom. Now let's look for a moment at attacker mindset. There was a research group in Singapore from the Singapore University of Technology and Design. They released a paper on, they consolidated about 20 years, 30 years of classification of different hacker types. And when they consolidated, they came up with 13 different hacker types and 7 types of motivation. I put the information into 2 charts. So we're not going to go through all of them, but just to give you an idea of the different styles of hacking. So we have novice at the top there. The novice are newbies. Like they have lower skill. They don't necessarily know much. They may just be curious about things, want just to have fun recreation-wise, and they rely on tools. Sometimes they're called script kiddies. Another one, third one down, insiders. These are disgruntled, either current or ex-employees. And because they're disgruntled, they may abuse the access that they have. Another one to look out for is professionals. These ones will, in your professional career, you may come across them. They further criminal activities. They're highly skilled. They know what they're doing, and the motivation is usually financial. So what's a hacktivist? A hacktivist is a group of cyber criminals that further or do activities that really align with their political or ideological views. And we'll bring that a little later down. So nation states is another one that I think you'll probably be seeing in the news here and there, probably in the next little while. Nation states really try to destabilize, to disrupt, destroy other nations' infrastructure, networks, systems. They are highly skilled, they're highly trained, and most likely have a lot of resources. Some interesting ones, the one down further on the bottom, crime facilitators. So as I mentioned, ransomware as a service, crime as a service is another idea where they provide you tools and technology to other cyber criminals to be able to further cyber activities. Again, they are extremely skilled and they also are motivated by finance. Okay, so you know how in business you have personas, you have initial ideal customer profiles so that you would understand, say for sales or marketing, who you're targeting. So it's the same idea here. Cyber criminal personas should help you understand your business a little bit better to see if you are likely to target, how successful they would be, perhaps if there's a risk, what kind of risk you have, and if there was an incident, what fallout there would be, and then also it gets you thinking about your defenses and how you would actually deal with them should this type of persona target you. So an example of this would be, there's many personas, I'm just going to give you a few of them. A hobbyist, really, it's for fun, casually doing things. So sometimes it's recreation, sometimes they're curious. Some of the hacker types included would be novice or student. I don't think we have time to go through all of the case studies, but this one is really interesting. If you're going to read up on it, read up on Marcus Hutchins. He started off as a hobbyist and eventually became a pivotal character in the WannaCry ransomware attack. in a good way, okay? So go read up on him, it's good. Okay, opportunists. Opportunists really, they're not there all the time. It's for short gain, right? They target when the opportunity arises. They tend to have low to medium skill level, and there's a wide range of motivations. They can be curious, they might have recreation, but it could also be financial or revenge. Now, a case study here, which is very interesting, is an opportunistic insider threat. So, Cash App is a mobile app that allows you to receive and transfer funds in the United States and in UK. And in 2022, an employee was let go, but his access was not revoked. And as a result of that, he ended up compromising 8.2 million customer data. So I bring this up because when you are in industry and as IT managers or within this area, technology, if there isn't one source of truth for employees, and employees are let go, and so here's a chain, right? Employees are let go, human resources get involved. They bring in legal or IT to handle closing of accounts. Now, if there's a gap between the employee being let go and IT being notified, the IT may not close the access quick enough. So that's some of the struggles in industry right now. I've been talking to a couple of security people out there. Okay. Well-funded. I think you're going to see that in the news quite often these days. Well-funded organizations really know what they want. They know how to get it. They've got time on their hands. They're willing to wait. They've got a lot of resources, a lot of skill, and they're highly trained. These include nation states, crime facilitators. It would also do, say, professionals who are writing the software. Crowdsourcers. Crowdsourcers are the ones that join together to pool their resources to further a criminal activity. So I'm going to briefly bring up, and I don't know if you're familiar with Colonial Pipelines, but in May of 2021, Colonial Pipelines was attacked by DarkSide Ransomware group, and $4.4 million was the ransom, and it was paid. But the recovery process actually took quite a bit longer. And the reason why I bring that up is because oil and gas is a target, and we are in an environment where everyone will be affected by the oil and gas industry, whether it's directly by employment or secondary, tertiary because of family and friends. So the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity just released a report, and I'm going to read it out to you, and please listen to the verbiage here. We assess the oil and gas sector in Canada will likely, very likely, continue to be targeted by a state-sponsored cyber espionage for commercial or economic reason. Ransomware is almost certainly the primary cyber threat to the reliable supply of oil and gas to Canadians. So, very likely, almost certainly. This is for you to understand that this is what you might be dealing with in the next couple of years. The ransomware attack chain, this concept, it differs, and it's just kind of like a framework because each operator is going to be different, right? So the attack is not always going to be sequential like this. But the gist of concept is, initially, the attackers are going to do reconnaissance. They're going to figure out who their target is and learn as much about them as possible. And then after that, they're going to figure out initial access. One of the major considerations here in business is that organizations are really concerned about social engineering. It's one of the primary ways that attackers get in, through phishing, for example, or smishing. Smishing is when they use texting to try and trick you. Quishing, QR phishing, is where they use the QR codes and send you off to some place that you shouldn't go to. Actually, I'm gonna talk about a little bit of smishing here. Last week, I got a text message, and it said, "Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm from XYC Recruitment Incorporation. I got your information from a recruitment database, and I've got information to send to you." And then a couple days later, "Hi, I'm Laura. I'm from ABC, a recruitment consultant." And it's the same message, very same structure, different people that supposedly. But as students coming up in summertime and you're looking for a job, please be aware that in cases of large layoffs or seasonal, when people are looking for jobs, they're just going to send out these types of messages, and whoever catches it, right? And what ends up happening is if you do dialogue with them, then they might end up getting sensitive information, or in the case of that job application form, you might be downloading something you shouldn't. So always go to the source and where you're actually applying to. This set of steps, I actually put it all together, but typically it's represented separately. Persistence is the idea that they are trying to stay under the hood, under radar, so that they won't be discovered. Then what they will do is try to get as much information about your business infrastructure as possible. They'll do stuff like lateral movements. They'll go from one device to another, maybe living off the LAN, and then escalating the privileges. At some point, though, they will do an exfiltration. Exfiltration, as previously mentioned, is the theft, is to try and steal that sensitive data off of your networks. They will encrypt, and they will demand ransom. As I said, ransomware there's a business model to it. And it's a thriving business model. So they have developers, and they have a distribution system, ransomware as a service. They have affiliates, the customers of ransomware as a service, and affiliates might be able to share the ransom payments with the developers. They also have a way of processing payments. So, as I mentioned earlier, it was mailing it to someplace or buying it from a website. Now it's cryptocurrency, automated payments, as well as laundering services for the Bitcoin. There's customer support, surprisingly. They have a VIP chat capabilities, just to help them with the negotiations, to help your important customers with decrypting after ransom has been paid. Now, some cyber criminals focus. It's great. They focus on breaching a system. They get at that information, and then they sell their credentials. That is called initial access brokers. In those cases, training and access prevention strategies are not going to prevent that, because those that use initial access brokers are using legit credentials to log in. No amount of training is going to prevent that. As with any company, you're going to start to see where you can grow, right? So you can specialize, maybe improving encryption. Some people will specialize in how to spread it. Others will look at specific targets, like the finance sector versus the healthcare sector, very different, and might require different ways of approaching them. So now let's look at the final topic, which is kind of like the future and the challenges that lay ahead from an attacker's perspective, and then later on from a defense perspective. From my opinion is that it is really an arms race. We are always, it's a tug and flow between the two different groups. From an attacker's perspective, they're going to increase targets. Expect that. Expect that they're going to focus on specific targets, and also expect that critical infrastructure will be in news, whether it be our fresh water, our energy, maybe our healthcare. Some patients that within healthcare might be affected. They're going to leverage AI. As we've seen currently, they are leveraging AI as much as they can. And I'm going to talk about quantum computing a little bit later. So another area is that they're going to try to advance their evasion techniques. So improve how they encrypt without getting detected. The concept of polymorphism and metamorphism has been around for a while, but I found it an interesting area because, okay, so polymorphism, so if you have software, that software might be able to change a bit of it. So it makes it a lot difficult for certain types of detection to look for that. Metamorphic, though, is every time it runs, perhaps it actually changes its whole entire structure. And if it can do that, the detections that are looking for specific behaviors now have a little bit more work to do. As I said, ransomware is a service. We have an entire topic on this, and it's not going away. We've got affiliates that they're going to reach out to. You've got specialized services, customer support, and of course, maybe there's enhanced chatbot AI capabilities. And probably one of the more important issues is that they're going to figure out ways to pressure you some more. As we said, there's encryption extortion, there's double extortion, data exfiltration, mentioned already, and we're going to light bulb that, unauthorized transfer of data. Triple extortion, they're going to steal data. This is an interesting concept. Well, what if the business leaders are not going to play along? Employees might, customers might. So harassment on that level could be a possibility in the ways to pressure the company. As well as SEC filing. So Security Exchange and Commission in the United States, regulatory body. And so if you're not going to play by their rules, they might just take your rules and turn it on you. So they actually reported an organization to the SEC because that particular ransomware, I guess the negotiations weren't going so well, and they weren't happy with some of the things they found with that organization. As with defense, we've already seen this happening lately, and I think it will continue to do so, where government bodies or regulatory bodies will find some sort of framework to help businesses follow some cyber practices, how to handle data privacy, how to handle the protection, or if an incident occurred, what you do, what you should or shouldn't do. And we'll be also seeing some international cooperation as well. The challenge here is that a business is a business, and there's always been a bit of a push and pull between business versus security. So a business needs to run, right? The main goal of business is to make sure that there's revenue in play. And businesses may just focus on the minimum security that meets these frameworks to be able to run the business. Cyber awareness has been big, and I see that it will continue to be so, but maybe it might change. Right now, some of the training is quite boring, and I've been told it's like, oh, I can't stand this anymore. But what if you certified employees on specific cyber security skills? What if you train them based off of their roles? What if you gamified and made it more fun? What if you brought in current trends so they know ahead of time that, oh, this is what's happening right now, and to be aware of this sort of strategy? As I mentioned earlier, cyber awareness, it does not solve all. In the case of initial access brokers, where attackers are logging in with legit stolen credentials, you can't train that to stop it. Or if you had insider threats, again, employee training won't be able to stop that sort of activity. One of the interesting areas is improved endpoint security. So probably more adoption of XDRs and XDRs and EDRs, endpoint detection and response tools, or extended detection and response tools. These are the tools that you place onto your devices, and they are there to monitor anomalies, behavioral anomalies, and they will hopefully help you stop things that are not as expected on that system. The other focus would be on zero trust policies. Ransomware is still getting through though, so what we're seeing challenges are that ransomware is getting through with the unprotected endpoints. Today, Sophos released an article talking about remote ransomware, where they would get in through unprotected endpoints and then from there attack other devices. Backup strategies, people always talk about backup, and there's numerous strategies here. 3-2-1, basically you have 2 backups on 2 different devices and then 1 other backup on a remote device, possibly air-gapped. Immutable backups means you don't really have a way for them to modify those backups. It's protected for a certain amount of time. The challenge here with backups is it doesn't solve for double extortion, because they're just going to threaten with your data, your sensitive data, triple extortion, or other layers of extortion. This is an interesting area. Advanced detection and response. So in the next couple of years, definitely with AI, ML, and behavioral analytics, we're going to see an incorporation of these technologies into the detection and response systems. And this really just, again, helps you to identify what abnormal behaviors there are that may have been missed through like a human eye, but AI can see those patterns much better. Quantum computing. Quantum computing is the idea that you're leveraging the laws of quantum mechanics to be able to calculate complex systems much more rapidly. And it's still not quite there yet. There's still some growth and scaling, as well as some error handling that needs to be done. But in the next couple of years, if we can leverage this technology, we could solve some of the current encryption blockages that are like, there's some very complicated encryption algorithms that our computers at this moment can't handle. Maybe quantum computing can do that. But the challenge here is that if we can leverage these technologies, so can the other side. So key takeaways here, we looked at the history of ransomware. We saw it go from simple software to a really complex system. We looked at hacker types and their motivations, going from students, novice, to all the way to crime as a service. We looked at cyber criminal personas. This is to help you in the business understand what your risks are. Ransomware as a business model is thriving. Go from product development all the way to customer service. And finally, it's between attacker and defender. Which way the balance rides is really, I think, dependent on the technologies that come forward in the next couple of years, and how we handle that.